What happened to homemade movies? Why did you stop doing homemade movies? Hey, why don't you do another homemade movies episode? Believe me, I get this question all the time, and first of all, I'm grateful because that means you guys really liked the show. The very short answer is it got canceled. It just couldn't last forever. It got canceled because it wasn't getting a lot of views and it cost a lot of money to make. That's just the plain and simple short version. If you want to see the very long version with a complete timeline and everything, you can see that on my website. But anyways, long story short, as you know, I did homemade movies. This is now over 10 years ago. 2013 is when it started as a full-time weekly show, and I don't have to give you the entire history. I've talked about that endlessly here on this channel, right? So it stopped a handful of times, as you might know, and then it picked back up again a few times. The first time was after my 1.5 years of doing it full-time at the house, and I was completely just like run into the ground doing this 7 days a week. I couldn't come up for air, and as fun as it was just incredibly impossible to keep up with. I was in charge of everything as far as like hiring the people. Ben did an amazing job working on it full time with me, but I was doing, you know, all the accounting. I was like just in charge of like this entire show, the music, the sound effects, editing, getting the behind the scenes done with Sean, who edited that. And it was just like this massive operation, and it was once a week, which is like totally insane. But anyways, after I stopped doing it, longtime fans of the show know that Ben was doing the show on his own for a little while. And then after sometime in I think 2015 or maybe it was early 2016, I was running content for Mashable. I was the head of kind of original YouTube production there, and we acquired the Cinefix channel. So I brought it back and I had Ben producing it. So he was still doing it at home, but I was the executive producer, got to jump in and still play characters like Tony Stark every now and then. And it was really fun. Ben moved on from Mashable. I had John and Mark producing it, and that was sort of like the last hurrah. I mean, the bottom line is, towards the end there, it just was not getting a lot of views. And so the expense, even though it's all homemade and DIY, it was a pretty expensive show to make, especially on Cinefix. Cinefix primarily was having a lot of success with shows that were entirely just written and then edited and then had a VO. Clint and T and people like that were doing these shows, and they just didn't cost as much because they were kind of just limited to information and using clips and things on screen. Whereas homemade movies is over here fully, you know, shooting. It turned into like a fairly big production. As DIY as the costumes and the things that you saw on camera were, it was still actually a pretty huge production. It was a full live action production, something that Cinefix did not really have any others of, except for Costume Squad. So DIY Costume Squad, we tried shooting those simultaneously, and I had a dedicated studio space that was really cool. So we were shooting, Mark was up there shooting DIY Costume Squad and homemade movies. John was producing, I was hosting. It was like, let's try and make this sustainable, but bottom line is it just cost so much to make both of those shows, and they were not getting a lot of views, so ultimately they were canceled. So yes, I was part of the leadership at Mashable that, you know, ran Cinefix and ultimately signed off on that decision, although it did come from my boss ultimately, because I would have probably been like, well, maybe we can try and make it work this way, or make it cheaper or whatever, but it just got canceled. So yeah, both of those shows were canceled at the same time, and it was really sad, but it just didn't make a lot of sense when we were doing these other shows on Cinefix that were getting, you know, 500,000 views every time, and they just basically cost a fraction to make. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. When you're trying to run a YouTube channel, every penny counts. So it was a good run. I think the fact that it lasted from essentially 2012 to 2017 was amazing. I mean, I never would have thought that it would have lasted that long when I made that first Man of Steel trailer at the end of 2012. And then it turned into homemade movies, and we did it for so long. So I'm super proud of it. Also, I have tried to kind of revive it on my own for what it's worth. I did my own, kind of in the middle of the COVID lockdown, I did my own trailer for the Batman, entirely shot for shot. Just did everything like 100% myself. And I had like one friend or two friends maybe in a few shots, but I mean, I made that sucker at home. So please go watch that one because that's on my channel. I thought people were gonna be really psyched and like, oh my gosh, homemade movies, it's Dustin doing it again, and it just didn't get a lot of views. So full behind the scenes, everything, go check that one out. I did a fan created one. I did Wonder Woman 2, where I had fans from all around the world, 15 and under, kids basically sending in clips. I organized this whole thing, and it was actually super, super complicated. Everyone did individual shots, and I put that together. Also did not take off on my channel. So, you know, I try to revive it every now and then, or some version of it, and it just doesn't take off. So ultimately, it's like not worth the time and effort that it takes to do it. What I have been doing on my channel, you might have seen, is what I call Homemade Movies Rewind, where I'm doing essentially director's commentaries on every single episode, starting with the very first ones. We're now a year into it, so please go watch those if you're super interested in behind the scenes facts from the show. I just talk about the experience and talk about things that I had never mentioned before, and a lot more of the same old complaining about how hard the show was. So if you like that sort of thing, go watch it. All right, well, thanks for watching. Hope that answered your questions. And yeah, sorry I can't just keep cranking these out. I will if some company can come along and pay me to do it. I will gladly put together a team and make a bunch more of them. But someone's got to have some money, because it ain't me. I guess that's it. All right, well, go watch the other stuff on my channel. I've got a lot. I got DIY props, I've got music, I've got like DIY house content. So yeah, all right, I'll see you soon on the channel doing something. I don't know what. Enjoy this end screen. Click the links. Subscribe. Seriously, just go watch my other stuff, please. Thanks. Bye.